All right, welcome back everyone. Today we're jumping into a huge topic, how to crack the front-end interview. So if you've ever felt kind of lost trying to prep for one, trust me, you are not alone. It can feel like this massive, confusing thing, but don't worry. We're about to make it all make sense, using some amazing insights from the front-end interview handbook.
And look, just to prove this isn't some pie-in-the-sky theory, check out this quote from Erin Teo. She's now a senior front-end engineer at Facebook. This is real-world proof that with the right game plan, which we're about to lay out for you, getting those top-tier offers is absolutely 100% possible.
Okay, so here's the game plan for today. First, we'll talk about what makes front-end interviews so different. Then, we'll get into the skills that matter way more than just algorithms. After that, we'll break down the actual interview formats you'll run into, give you a toolkit of resources, and finally, we'll talk about how to think like a senior engineer, which is the real secret to standing out.
All right, let's dive right in with Section 1, the front-end interview difference. We really need to get into why your prep for this has to be a totally different strategy than for any other kind of software engineering role.
You know, one of the biggest headaches, and the handbook calls us out right away, is that good resources for front-end interviews are just all over the place. They're hard to find, they're scattered, and it leaves a ton of really smart engineers feeling totally confused about what's coming. It's a super common problem, but we're going to clear that all up today.
And this right here, this slide really nails the core issue. A typical software engineering interview can feel like you're just being quizzed on these super complex, kind of obscure algorithms. But for front-end, the focus shifts big time. It's way more about your deep, practical, hands-on knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and how you actually use them to build stuff. So yeah, just grinding LeetCode, that's not going to cut it. Which brings us to a really important point. Since it's not just about those obscure algorithms, we got to double down on the fundamentals that really matter for a front-end engineer.
And when we talk about fundamentals, you've got to be rock solid on these things. For CSS, it's not enough to know what the box model is. You need to deeply get how specificity and positioning can make or break a layout. In JavaScript, oh man, they will absolutely grill you on tricky stuff like the this keyword, how promises really work under the hood, and what a closure actually is. Getting these down cold is non-negotiable.
Okay, so you've nailed the fundamentals. Awesome. But how are they actually going to test you on this stuff? That brings us to the core interview formats you're going to see when you walk in that room.
So pretty much everywhere, front-end interviews boil down to one of these 5 formats. You've got your pure JavaScript coding, like building little utility functions. Then there's user interface coding, where you'll build a component from the ground up. Yep, there's some algorithmic coding, but it's usually the simpler, more practical LeetCode style stuff. Then you'll often get a rapid-fire quiz or trivia round, and finally, system design for the front end.
To make this super concrete, here are some classic examples you'll see out in the wild. For that JavaScript coding round, you might get asked to implement debounce or promise.all. For UI coding, think building an autocomplete search box, an image carousel, or a star rating widget. And for system design, they might ask you to map out something big, like an email client, or even the emoji autocomplete feature you use in Slack or Discord. Okay, that's the theory. But what about the big dogs? What are companies like Meta, Google, and Amazon really asking? What do they actually care about?
Okay, pay attention, because this slide is basically your secret weapon for studying smart. Look at Meta. Crazy, right? They totally skip the typical algorithm round for front-end and don't do UI coding either. So if you're targeting them, your time is much better spent on JavaScript and system design. But then you look at Google or Amazon and, well, you got to be ready for the whole shebang. And check out Atlassian. No quiz, no algorithms, just pure practical coding and design. This is gold. Use this to focus your energy where it's going to have the biggest impact.
All right, so now we know what to prep for. Let's get into the how. It's time to build out your preparation toolkit.
The foundation for all this, the guide for our whole explainer today, is the front-end interview handbook. Think of it as your home base. It organizes this whole crazy process, and just as importantly, it points you to some seriously powerful places to practice. And one of the top resources it points to is Great Front End. This is where you really get your hands dirty, you know? It's got a massive library of over 500 practice questions, and the solutions are written by folks who used to be interviewers at fan companies. It covers everything, building UI components, JavaScript challenges, the whole 9 yards.
And for that algorithm piece we talked about, there's a great tool called AlgoMonster. It was actually built by Google engineers, and its whole goal is to help you get ready as fast as possible by focusing on the key patterns that show up over and over again.
It's super data-driven, and it's a one-time fee, which is pretty awesome. Okay, we've covered the what and the how. Now let's shift gears a little. This last part is about thinking like a senior engineer. It's how you go from just passing to absolutely knocking it out of the park. This line right here says it all. Good candidates, they can follow instructions and build the component. But exceptional candidates, the ones who get the best offers, they're thinking about the whole universe around that component. How will it be used? Who's going to use it? What could go wrong? That's the mindset shift that changes everything.
So what does that bigger picture actually look like when you're coding? Well, it's this stuff. You should be thinking about accessibility, and you'll hear it called A11Y. Is it usable by everyone? What about performance? What happens when you throw 10,000 items at it instead of 10? Security. Are you accidentally opening the door for attacks? Bringing these things up in your interview, that screams senior level experience.
So at the end of the day, the goal of all this prep is to totally shift your mindset. You're not there just to be a trivia machine that spits out correct answers. You're there to prove you're a thoughtful, product-minded engineer who can be trusted to build great stuff. That is what gets you the job.
And that brings us to the end. So I'll leave you with a little challenge to get you started on this path. What one UI component will you build this week to practice everything we just talked about? Pick one, a modal, a tooltip, an image carousel, and really build it with accessibility, performance, and security in mind from line one. That's how you really start to level up.